Did the Rams address their edge rusher needs? Coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day, free and available wherever you get your podcast. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DMac_LA. And as always, I'm joined by the host of the Rams pre, half, and post-game show on their flagship station, ESPN 710. He's entering his 8th season with the team, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on Twitter at Travis Rogers. Travis, you ready to keep breaking down this draft, my man?
I cannot wait. I'm ready for training camp to start. I'm ready for the first preseason game, and I cannot wait to find out what the schedule is and who we open up with on that first Sunday.
Oh, you're ready to roll, Travis, man.
I am. I'm about the games, Doug.
Break down this draft. Now, we're going to start with the next pick. We did Steve Avila in the last show. We talked about Stetson Bennett, but we're going to focus on the defensive side of the ball today. And we're going to start with Byron Young, the number 77 pick in the 3rd round. They selected the edge rusher out of Tennessee, 6'2", 250 pounds. And what I like about this guy, he's athletic, a 4'4", 340. He posted a 38-inch vertical with an 11-foot broad jump. He's already faster than pretty much most of our cornerbacks on this roster. But what was your initial takeaway on this pick? And do you like this pick, Travis?
I do like the pick because I think it's an area of need that the Rams have had for the last season or so. Because when the Rams defense is operating at its best, it's not just because Aaron Donald is one of the great defensive players of all time. It's because Aaron Donald is one of the great defensive players of all time, and he frees up other guys to go do things that they might not be able to do otherwise. Now, you're going to need talent, right? And so a player like Byron Young certainly is a talented guy who's going to slide in this role. But when you look at when this defense has been at its best, it's not just because Aaron Donald's there. It's because Michael Brockers is on the other side. It's because a player like Ndamukong Suh can be on the other side. You know, we've seen some other guys, more linebackers, whether it's a Von Miller or whether it's a Leonard Floyd, some of these guys that we've seen over the last couple of years. But these guys have made their bones in this league, not just because they're very good players, but because Aaron Donald is still that guy that demands constant attention. He's somebody that demands a near automatic double team on virtually every snap, which means someone else is going to be able to go and get home and someone else is going to be able to go and do some work. And that's why I think that pick at that spot, obviously they went, like we talked about yesterday for all you everydayers on Locked On Rams, when we went offensive line. Now you go to that other side to get pressure, because if Aaron Donald isn't the only person you need to worry about, that Rams defense gets so much better, and it's almost exponential. If I have to worry about a second person not named Aaron Donald, the Rams defense gets very good very quickly.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great point in that you free things up for Aaron Donald. You really help that defense around him. And I think, like you said, he does fill that glaring need. And you watch Rams games last year, and it was so frustrating to watch teams take advantage of the Rams defense and get that ball out so quick. And they had no answer for it. And look, they needed an explosive edge defender, a guy that can be disruptive, a guy that can get into that backfield and do damage. And he has all the requisite tools to do that. I mean, he can be an every down outside linebacker. He can help in the backfield and make plays. So, yeah, I love his productivity. I think he has a very high upside. And like I said, he really is an athletic freak. He's an older guy, but still, I mean, you're talking about a team that, like my theory from yesterday, look, they're not looking for maybe possibly 5-6 years down the line. They're looking for some help now and a guy that can have an impact. But can we talk about his story, his journey to the NFL? To me, that's what I love about this guy and why I really wish him nothing but success at this level. I mean, you talk about a guy, he wasn't even ranked as a recruit coming out of high school. He was a 0-star recruit, didn't have the grades to go D1. He gets a job working as the assistant manager at Dollar General. He sees a flyer for tryouts at the Georgia Military College in 2019. The 2020 season was canceled due to COVID. Then someone saw him play. They taped his practices It goes viral. He sends his tapes out to JUCOs, and then he balls out. He becomes the number one edge rusher as a JUCO recruit, ends up at Tennessee, and then the rest is history. Look, that is a script that is fit for Hollywood. You talked yesterday about guys coming from winning programs. What do you think about his character and what that means for him at this level? It's very Kurt Warner-esque.
Well, I think that what you're talking about, that you go to a guy that did not have options and that you fast forward a few years later and he's a high draft pick in the NFL, that speaks to work ethic, that speaks to character, and that speaks to a willingness to be coached. And I think that when you listen to Sean McVay talk, when you listen to Les Snead talk, and one of the things that I've been so impressed with Sean McVay since he's come to the Los Angeles Rams a handful of years ago was the we, not me. Somebody that has been through this like he has understands that concept probably better than a guy who was the 5-star, who goes right to Alabama or Ohio State or USC. And guys had to go through the journey that you just described coming into this with understanding that, I don't know everything. This isn't the culmination of something that I've been expecting my entire life. You had to fight and scrap for every last thing that you got, from management at the dollar store, like you're talking about, to finding yourself playing in Knoxville in front of 100,000 people, to playing for a team that, I think at least is one of the marquee teams in the NFL, with the coach, with the stadium, with the location, and everything that goes along with it. That is an amazing ride, and you can rest pretty comfortably knowing that he's not going to take advantage of it, and you're going to get that story, that he is going to take advantage of it, I should say, and that it's not going to be one of those stories of, hey, what happened to this guy? He thought he had everything figured out. That's not going to be the thing. Now, I will say this, and obviously he had success at Tennessee. You talked about the athleticism that comes along with it. This is a little bit contradictory. I like guys that have pedigree. I like guys that have been the guy for a long time. They understand the weight that comes along with it. Now, you give me somebody that's on the other side of this like he is, that's an interesting play too. I just want good players, whether they've come from Alabama or Tennessee or whether they came through the dollar store, just get them to the Rams and get them ready to go. And I think that he's going to take incredible advantage of this opportunity.
Yeah, I think if you look at his overall production, you don't have the long track record with him, but you focus on the athleticism, you focus on the upside, and the fact that, yeah, he does fill that need. I think he can improve his rush defense, and I think that's something they're going to focus on. But I think Raheem Morris is ecstatic to have him in this offense. I mean, they really have no real established outside linebacker, so he's going to fit in nicely. Day one, I think he has a chance to make an impact. So I think you'll see them mix it up. I think they're going to have different packages for him. I think they're really excited to have him on this roster. He also worked at a Burger King. I mean, I just love this guy's story. I mean, we've been watching the NBA playoffs, and of course, you got Jimmy Butler, who he faxed in his letter of intent to Marquette out of McDonald's. Maybe he can be the NFL's Jimmy Butler or something like that. But what overall grade would you give this pick? I want to know from you, Mr. Travis Rogers.
Yeah, I think that we talked about this the other day. I think that these grades kind of come in three phases. I think there's the grade right after the pick is made. I think there's the grade after the rookie season. And then I think there's the most meaningful grade, which comes after 3 years in the NFL. I think that's the one that matters most. Right now, this maybe, you look around and you read the draft experts that this might have felt like a little bit of a reach, but it's also an incredible upside sort of situation where when you're talking about that athleticism, that maybe you had to go up and get him a little early for fear of him not being there by the time it comes around the next time. I like this. I'd give this probably somewhere around a B, which I feel like most of the Rams picks were in the top half of this draft, maybe a little bit more, some reaches down lower in the draft that I know we'll talk about for you everydayers. But I think that this was a good pick, but it does come with a little bit of risk.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think it's tough to give it an A, but I do like the upside. I love his athleticism. I think he has a chance to be a star. I'm going to give it a B+. I think he goes on to sign a big deal, and he goes back and he can buy everything at that Dollar General store. I think this guy has a chance to be a dude at this level. All right, so that's Byron Young, but we're going to get into the next pick coming up in the third round. We're going to talk about Kobie Turner next on Locked On Rams.
All right, but first, let's talk about our pals at FanDuel. Of course, look, football season's the ultimate time to go out there and get a little action going on along the way, and FanDuel is the best place to do it. You know me. I love baseball. Doug loves baseball. Doug's a huge Dodger guy. I'm a huge Dodger guy. There's no bad way to do it at FanDuel, whether it's the NFL, whether it's Major League Baseball, the NBA playoffs, because right now, New customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. So make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs. That is right. You heard me. $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. So put that FanDuel app on your phone. Get down to it. Decide which team you like. The Lakers, right? Maybe an under on Steph. Maybe a little bit of the value right there. You can go try out all of these things at FanDuel because there's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on and get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/locked on. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And thanks again for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day. Everydayers, do not forget that tomorrow on the show, we're going to be talking about that Rams running back position, which since Todd Gurley left has been kind of a little bit of a black hole for the Rams. That's coming up on tomorrow's Locked On Rams.
And moving right along, we're going to look at the next pick, the 89th pick in the third round out of Wake Forest, 6'2", 288 pounds, Kobie Turner. A little undersized at the position, Travis, but it definitely does fill another need. Of course, the Rams, they lost Greg Gaines in free agency. They needed to add depth to their defensive line. What do you like? What do you not like? Do you like this pick, Travis?
Well, Kobie Turner, like you just said, has one thing on his resume that makes you go, okay, and that's the 6'2" part, right? That just a little bit of maybe a type. And I understand, I am fully aware that maybe the greatest defensive tackle of all time is on this team and is undersized. But I think that you're playing a dangerous game if you think that all of a sudden there's going to be an opportunity to recreate what Aaron Donald does. Aaron Donald is one of one. Aaron Donald is somebody that there's a reason that most of these guys are a little bit bigger than this. There's a reason that most of these guys are a little bit taller than this. Now, that being said, I do like the pick. I think this is a draft for the Rams, and I think that Kobie Turner kind of falls into this category in particular. Let's get some guys at a position and figure out which of these guys is our guy. You're not going to bat 1,000 in the NFL draft. Nobody does. You're going to have some guys that maybe are starters. You're going to have some guys that maybe can add some depth. And let's be honest about it, Doug. You're going to have some guys that are going to be driving a truck in a couple of years. That's just the way that this stuff goes. That's just how the NFL draft works. So unless you're picking, first round guys, second round guys, those guys got to play. Third round guys, you would like to think that you're going to find somebody that can be a part of your organization. But I do like the fact that they're kind of doubling down on some of these guys that might be able to fill some roles. And if they don't, they have other options at that point, at that position as well. Now, Kobie Turner, again, Wake Forest isn't the guys that we've been talking about. It's not TCU. It's not Tennessee. This is a program that's been better of late, but maybe not one of those marquee programs. Will that step up in competition impact him? Will he just kind of seamlessly ride right through it? I think that's a big question for a guy coming out of a program like that.
Yeah, no, I think that you make some very interesting points on the size. And I think you look at this division, you look at what they do when they face teams like the 49ers, and they constantly double team Aaron Donald. They make it difficult for him to make plays. And you kind of want some size, you want some girth, but he is strong. I mean, you talk about that Demon Deacons program. They have been trending in the right directions. Last year, he had a 92.2 Pro Football Focus grade for last season. That was second to Georgia's Jalen Carter. So right up there with some of the best as far as how he was grading out. Now, I think it's one of those examples, though, where I see a lot of Rams, they're not reacting favorably to this draft pick because they didn't see him up in those mock drafts. And sometimes when you see that, you have to remind yourself there's a big difference between a mock draft and a team's big board. And I think he was higher on a lot of teams' big board than he was mock. To me, mock drafts are like NCAA tournament brackets, right? You care about them before the tournament starts, and then after your bracket is busted in day two, you don't really care about it, and it's pretty meaningless. So I think when you look at the value of him, I don't know if he's going to be a future Pro Bowler. I do think there's a chance that he can anchor this D-line years down the line. And also think, too, when it comes to Aaron Donald, you just have to give him a little bit of space. If he can do anything down there and have any kind of impact to free up some movement for Aaron Donald up on that line, he is going to be someone who can be an asset to this team. But, yeah, I think when you look at this pick, I think it could have been a reach. On the same token, I think it definitely addressed the need.
Like you talked about, Doug, you go back a couple of drafts for the Rams. I want to use this as an example that this doesn't feel like a reach like maybe Tutu Atwell felt like a reach a couple
Yeah.
of years ago, who is drastically undersized, who really has not made an impact on this team at all. This feels like somebody who is going to play for you. This feels like somebody who could be a potential starter. This does not feel like hey, if everything breaks exactly right, then all of a sudden we're going to have somebody that could be this incredibly dynamic, impactful player like I think they were hoping Atwell would be. It just hasn't worked. He's just too small. This is a bit of a reach, like I think we've been talking about, but it also does not feel like, if in fact it is, the middle version of this is NFL quality. Maybe it's not NFL starter, maybe it's not NFL Pro Bowler, but it's NFL quality. And I like picks that you can just kind of feel pretty good about, knowing that that guy's going to be on your team a year or two from now. And maybe by the time you get to that third year that we talk about, that he is in that starting lineup. He is somebody that you can count on, and he is somebody that you don't have to go redraft that position unless you're looking for depth.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely the case in this situation. That there's a combination of wanting to find stars, but also they're not in a great position where you can get greedy. You definitely just need to find some baseline depth. But I want to get your opinion on what you think this means for Aaron Donald. I mean, I said yesterday that I felt like this was the Matthew Stafford, Aaron Donald draft. We saw on day one, you get a big hog molly up front and an offensive lineman. And then you see in the second day where you go with the third round. It's actually both on the second day, but you get the third round picks where it's defensive minded. I mean, how much you think this is building around Aaron Donald and trying to keep him happy, and also too trying to win? Because I think that's kind of the big debate now with the Rams community, in the Rams, among the Rams fans, is this team trying to tank, or if they get close enough, do they try to win? But what do you think this means as far as the defense next year wanting to compete?
I think this is the biggest challenge that the Rams have, both this upcoming season, the draft that they just completed, and maybe what's coming up shortly after that. Maybe next year's draft is, how much longer is Aaron Donald the center of this defense? That he has already put together a Hall of Fame career. He has already demonstrated that he's maybe the best player in the history of this league at his position. This is sports. Father Time is undefeated, that it doesn't last forever, and you need to start making contingencies. Now, the question becomes, do you make picks to try to help Aaron Donald in the short term? Sure. Do you make picks to try to make sure that Aaron Donald is happy? Sure. Can you get something for Aaron Donald? It has to be a question that you have to ask at some point. This is a league where Tom Brady has played for another team. Joe Montana played for another team. Peyton Manning played. Very few people play for one team their entire career. And I'm not advocating that they go out there and move him, but I do think that it has to be somewhere. Well, like you mentioned, the big board. I don't know if it's the big board in Les Snead's mind or Sean McVay's mind, but this idea of, how much longer do we do this relative to when do we start to redo it again? We saw him do it with Jalen Ramsey. We saw him do it with Jared Goff. It turned over quickly with Todd Gurley. He's a much better player than those guys, but the principles of that are basically the same. I think that these were picks to help him, to give him help. I don't think that they're necessarily tanking this upcoming season. I think they're taking a let's see what happens approach to this season. And depending on maybe how the season starts, might determine whether people are coming or going, whether or not they're getting ready for a very high first-round pick for the first time since Jared Goff, or in fact, maybe you look at some of these last remaining assets and what can you get for those to try to restock that cupboard.
Yeah, no, they definitely need to do a lot of that. And I think when you look at the Kobie Turner pick, just in general, I think that this defense, they definitely need a lot of help. There's no question about that. But they also need to try to hit on guys. And from a development standpoint, I liked in his press conference with reporters where he said, I'm not quite Aaron Donald with it, but hey, you're going to be learning under Aaron Donald. So I think they need to take advantage of that aspect as well. So I definitely think that as a pick standpoint, you possibly could have gone with cornerback. It did make a lot of sense to possibly go that route. But as we talked about in the previous episode, you can find cornerbacks. It's a fluky position. It's a volatile position. And I think they can hit on that in a later round like we saw, and maybe you get some undrafted free agent guys. So I think they can develop and find that position. It's definitely a lot easier. But I think it's kind of funny, too, that you see a lot of Rams fans on Twitter. You see a lot of Rams fans on message boards that weren't happy with this pick. Hey, I'm sorry that Les Snead didn't consult the message board for his pick, right? You have to trust your guns on this and your big board. So I definitely think, like we said yesterday, it was a sensible pick. And once again, it's not the flashy pick, but but I think it's the one that makes a lot of sense, not only in the interim, but also long term.
Find guys that can play in the NFL, find guys that can play in the NFL quickly, and find guys that you don't have to pay right away. That you can find an Aaron Donald, great. Find a Todd Gurley, great. Those guys are very, very difficult to identify, very, very difficult to be in a position to draft them if you can't identify them. These are the sorts of picks, whether it's Kobie Turner, whether it's Byron Young, whether it's Steve Avila. These are the guys that are the backbone of your team, and then you can go find your stars along the way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Also, another guy, too, he went to the JUCO route. So I think it's very interesting, all these storylines that are within these players. It feels like a common theme, guys that have a lot of grit and character. But tomorrow we are going to talk about the running back position and a guy that could be the steal of the draft in Zach Evans, who they picked out of Ole Miss. So we're going to dive into that and the running back picture tomorrow here on Locked On Rams. As always, I'm joined by Mr. Travis Rogers. Travis, you can follow him at Travis Rogers on Twitter. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DMAC_LA. And remember, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.